Welcome everyone. Starloader 2.0 is currently in development, and it has a new shiny Savegame API, and the goal of this video is to show it off how it works to some degree. It is, however, pretty much in development still, so it may change radically. There are still a lot of corners to round up a bit, because it's still rough around the edges. And an example of this is also that this dependency block, which is required to use the API, it is kinda unsightly and needs to be polished, which is just an example in how bad some things are. But I've already written the bulk of the stuff because, well, I already did this video and it did not end well, I'd say. Or better said, it took far too long to write. So first of all, we are going to create our package in which our project is set up, and then we call it example project again and call it fat extend to extension class. And with that we have set up almost everything we need. We now need to have our initialize block, which we are going to populate later. And then we have an example listener class, which is just going to listen for the necessary events, such as loading, saving, and generating a galaxy, because, well, this is where we change the galaxy and we need to generate, load, or save our data. So we will have a private game state. Actually, we'll create a class first. Actually, it could be a but which we call it state, new game state. Actually, we'll leave it null just to be sure. And then we'll have an event handler for generating a galaxy generated event, and in which case we'll call it a new game state. Each game state will have a string to identify the game state. Right now the Savegame API can only serialize strings. Later on I might show how you can add a encoder and a decoder to serialize your own classes, but and in the future there will be other built-in data types such as array lists, byte arrays, integer arrays, integers, and all this fun. And we also have, just for the fun of it, so yeah, we won't have many issues. We'll also have the same constructor, which is just using an optional Shift O, I think, brings up this import menu, so we can import stuff rather fast. And here we are again. created the getter, so we can get the context ID. It's normally you could just say public here, and then you wouldn't very need the getter. But given that it's pretty much conventional to use getter instead of fields for no reason at all, we'll keep it private and have the getter there. So first of all, we are going to demonstrate another API, which is just brand new, and it's the name generator API. It uses the internal name generator API, and we'll call it an identifier, which is, for example, used for empire names. And then we'll have another handler, which will handle saving event, and in which case we are going to also need, we are going to get a metadata collector and put it in our, and here we are serializing to context ID or to context string, whatever, but we also need a namespace key to associate our value with, so we'll have a private final namespace key, which is the context ID key, and it will be passed to the constructor. And then we can use it to save our metadata value under this. And then after we have saved, we also need to load it again. So we'll have another event handler for this. And this time we are going to use the Galaxy loading end event, because we can only get our metadata after we have loaded. This is quite important because, well, it's the only thing that makes sense in this regard, but I can see how some may get it wrong. So we are going to use a new game state, event.getState, and then the deserialized form, and in this case we are going to get a value from the context ID key, and it outputs an optional object in this case, or optional string actually, because it smartcasts it here, or actually generic erasure causes it to be silently ignored. Which means that, well, it's much easier than if we just use a string, because then we need to actually cast it, hardcast, and need to suppress warnings and such. It's usually easier to do it like this, from my experience at least. Now we need to register our project listener, so we are going to use the event manager, the starload API event manager, not a GDX event manager, and register listener and new sample listener. And then we are also going to new namespace key. For this case we are just going to use our extension as the namespace. Usually it will be this, and then we'll have it key as key. Pretty easy. And now to actually test whether this works, we are going to do some debug statements, and state.getContext, and we are going to pop out everywhere where we need. Have some fancy identifier like this plus sign for saving, and the star for loading. And then I think we are pretty much done there. So we are going to compile it. Compilation is also pretty easy, under Maven at least. It's just Maven package, and it spits out our jar in our target folder. And then we are going to put it in the extension folder of ours, which, depending on your system, may be on a different place, but you can change it where exactly it will be. And then we are launching the StarLoader launcher, and we'll have to need the StarLoader API 2.0 or more, or technically just the development build I'm using, because I'm sure something will break in the future, as well as our example project there. So we are going to just click play, and we are into Galaxy now. We can see that it has attempted to generate a name, and then we can save it on the save slot 0, and it's still the same name, but if we create a new Galaxy, we can see that the name has changed now, and that if we save it another time in the save slot 1, it will be still the same. But if we load it from our save slot 0, we can see that it was previously this, but now it is our old value, which was generated initially. And to get back to the old state, we have simply to load up our save slot 1, which we're going to take a longer time because, well, reasons. And there we have it, we have our old value. And this is how it works, pretty much. Pretty easy technically.